Sandbox MMA fans, UFC 300 is this weekend, and for today's video, we are going to talk about how to make Bo Nickal a star. Bo Nickal a star, however you want to call it. I'm going to go Bo Nickal, and until the commentators completely prove me wrong, I'm going to keep saying Bo Nickal. So, UFC 300, Bo Nickal's on the main card. He is fighting a tomato can and Cody Brundage on the main card. There is a massive amount of people in the MMA community upset about this. They have a right to be. Plain and simple, they absolutely have a right to be upset about this. I'm upset about it a little bit. There are just other fighters that deserve to be on the main card. I get the UFC need to build their guy, but at this point, what they're doing is they're creating a bunch of hate for him. And I understand the argument about, that Guru made, right? His fans are going to be the ones to buy pay-per-views. I think a lot of people are going to buy the pay-per-views because of Charles and all the other fighters on there anyway. But regardless, it's nerve-wracking that we have to watch the UFC put this guy on the main card when we want nothing but success for him. We want him to have hype properly built, but he's fighting these absolute tomato cans. He's just can crushing, and I get it. You don't want to throw him into the fire too quickly, but then to have him on the UFC 300 main card is just garnering hate for him. You have Sterling that should be on it. You have Cater, obviously, in that same fight. You have Hiri versus Rakic that could be on it. You could argue that Cody versus Davis and Figueiredo should be on it. There's a lot of fighters that I would put on it over Bo Nickal. Pretty much all of them except for Marina and Holly Holm's fight. So Marina Rodriguez versus Andrade and Holly Holm versus Kayla Harrison is what I'm saying. But yeah, the UFC is literally doing everything in their power to crush the. I don't think they're trying to crush the star power of Bo Nickal. I will preface this by saying that. But what they're doing is they're generating more hate. And I also get the argument is that's actually drumming up attention for the fight. No one's talking about the Bo Nickal fight if it's not on the main card. It's just, another can crusher. Another time Bo Nickal is going to absolutely slaughter this guy. Let's get to the fights that we're really excited for. Because we know the outcome of this fight. We know what's going to happen. Cody Brundage is not a good opponent for anyone in the UFC, let alone Bo Nickal. But here we are. We got to see it on the main card. It's going to be a quick finish. And it's going to be a good star-making performance. But the UFC has done what I call brilliant and unbrilliant marketing by making people talk about Bo Nickal. We're all talking about it. You look at the Instagram comment sections on every post related to 300. There's hate about Bo Nickal being on the main card. And I also want to say this is not Bo Nickal's fault. This has nothing to do with him specifically. This just has to do with a fighter getting privileged by the UFC that doesn't deserve it, and that's why people are upset and uproaring it. There's no reason to hate on Bo Nickal, but I understand how MMA fans are. I'm the same way. We're just going to sometimes throw the shade that we want to throw because we're upset in general. So I get it. Bo Nickal is going to be the one that takes a lot of blame here. The UFC and Dana White will take blame as well, but Bo Nickal is going to take blame, a little bit unwarranted, but that's just kind of the name of the game. But what we're going to do today is not cause problems. We're going to come up with a solution. We're not just identifying a problem and letting it sit like people do in the world today. We're going to come up with a solution today. And so what I've done is come up with a solution on making Bo Nickal a star. I'm going to be moving my camera various times throughout this just so you can kind of see the presentation, I guess. But yeah, we're going to make Bo Nickal a star today. The first thing that needs to happen, he has to absolutely dominate and destroy Cody Brundage in round one on UFC 300. He must do this. If he does not, if this fight gets past round one, people are going to be saying that he got fraud checked even if he won. That's just how the sport is. That's just how people do things. He needs to destroy Cody Brundage in round one early, look dominant, which he 100% will. He's the biggest favorite in UFC history. I think he's minus 2,500 right now. He keeps fluctuating up to minus 3,000. I see different odds everywhere. Regardless of where I see him, he's the biggest favorite I've seen in a very long time outside of his own other fights. He just needs to dominate Cody Brundage in round one to start to get this going. After the fight, hear me out, guys. I'm not giving you political opinions here. I'm not telling you what you need to do, who you need to vote for. You can make that decision yourself. You're grown fucking adults. I'm going to make my decision. You make yours. This is not me telling you how I think politically. I want to talk about the fact that the MMA community and the UFC specifically love Donald Trump. You see him at all of the events. He gets the biggest pop. They gave him his own walkout. The UFC fans and the MMA fans absolutely love this guy. He's been a huge fan of the sport, and anytime he shows up at an event, the place goes nuts for him. He's like the biggest celebrity there. So if I'm Bo Nickal, I'm playing to the crowd here. I'm going to go acknowledge Trump in the crowd. Gonna go shake his hand, say hello, maybe endorse him. Just Bo Nickal, the UFC, the MMA fans lean on this side of the spectrum usually. And if you want to build star power and hype, acknowledge the guy, because I think he's going to get a lot of fans just from this. Sadly, that's just how, like, the world is. I think it's going to happen. I think he should do it. This is the right way to build yourself hype, get a bigger fan base, is go latch yourself onto the, the Strickland fan base, the old Colby fan base. They're going to need a new guy after Colby really fucking ruined or put a bad taste in their mouth after 296. This is the way you do it. Go acknowledge Trump in the crowd, give him daps, say hello to him, just tell him it's great to meet him, want to talk to him after. And then in the post-fight speech, Bo Nickal has already done an excellent job of this, but be humble. Thank God, be happy for your family, be humble, say thank you for the opportunity, thank you to the UFC, can't wait to keep moving forward. Be humble, be grateful for where you are, the position that you're in, and you can even acknowledge, hey, I know some of you didn't want me on this main card, but, I don't make those decisions. I'm happy I was just able to get out here and put on a great performance for you guys. And then he's going to get asked if he has a name next. Have a call out ready. I don't care who you say. Now, I have recommendations for who I think it should be. I don't really care who he ends up saying, but have a name ready. Get us some hype. Even if it's like, I want Hamzat, I want the title, just fucking have a name ready. Maybe don't say the title, but like, call out Hamzat, call out like Ikram Aliskerov, call out these Dagestanis. It builds real hype. It's going to get people excited. Have a call out ready. If you don't have anything prepared, people are going to kind of have a little bit of a bad taste in their mouth. So after you go out there, you give Trump daps, you be really humble and grateful in your post-fight speech, thanking the fans, thanking the UFC, thanking the crowd, thanking Vegas, and then have a call out ready. Have some kind of a name. Even if it's a joke, have a fucking name. The next up, Joe Rogan's going to be commentating. Joe Rogan's going to be glazing Bo Nickal, and rightfully so. Bo Nickal is incredibly talented. And Joe Rogan's had him on the JRE already, Joe Rogan Experience. Go check that podcast out. It is very good. Even though I make fun of Joe Rogan's commentary, I will say that back in the day, he was one of the best. Like, he was absolutely incredible. Nowadays, it's just, he's older. He's not as hardcore as he used to be. He just doesn't keep up with it the same that, the people that cover the sport now do. And I get it. It's reasonable. Like, it's completely reasonable with all the things that he has going on. But, he's still a massive fan of the sport. He still has the biggest platform in podcast history. Get on the Joe Rogan Experience again. Talk about the UFC 300. Talk about what you think you can do in the UFC. And talk about who Bo Nickal really is. Let yourself open up. Tell people who you are. You like to hunt. You like to be with your family. You love Penn State. You love wrestling. You do all this. Talk about who you are. Let the fans learn who you are. And you'll have people be able to attach to you. You'll have people actually care about what you have to do. They're going to connect with certain things that you connect with. That's just going to build a strong base of fans, and then you continue to build up from there. And Joe Rogan is the best at being able to put people on that he wants to put on, and I think he'd be more than willing to have Bo Nickal on for an episode, or at least part of an episode. And if you really want to take it to another level, Shane Gillis loves the UFC. You could have Bo Nickal and Shane Gillis on the same podcast. Shane Gillis does a great job of making other people look funny, or at least showing their personality to other people. I think that'd be a match made in heaven right there. I think that'd be the right way to do it. Get on Joe Rogan Experience, and if you get lucky, you'll have a comedian like Shane Gillis on there, or Mark Normand on there, that'll really help show your personality. And then most importantly, make a quick turnaround. The UFC want you on these big cards clearly. They want you on the pay-per-view of these big cards clearly. A big card is coming up in July, on July 29th. It's International Fight Week in 2024. Get on that card. Get on that card. Show you're active. Show you're ready for a quick turnaround and beat up on a Dagestani, Albert Duraev. Albert Duraev is not in the rankings. He is not the most talented middleweight fighter, but he's a Dagestani that has wrestling, and people go nuts for Dagestani wrestling, and we've always wanted to know what's better, American wrestling or Dagestani wrestling. Personally, it's up to the competitor, to me, but I think Bo Nickal would ragdoll Albert Duraev, and I think that builds so much fight. If you put a guy with the Russian flag next to Bo Nickal, a guy that's notoriously known for wrestling, both guys are now known for wrestling, and Bo Nickal goes in there and in the first round ragdolls him, gets a sub or TKO, and just beats the shit out of him in round one on the opener of a pay-per-view for International Fight Week. That's how you build hype. Have him make a quick turnaround against Albert Duraev and let him ragdoll him in round one to get him ready for right outside of the top 15. I think this is the right way to do it. I think this is the only way to do it. And if he makes this quick turnaround, he will immediately have respect of the fans. Immediately, he will get more respect for that. People love when fighters have quick turnarounds. It's not always the most popular thing to do because it puts you in a precarious situation. But if Bo Nickal shows he is more than willing to do that and he performs, his fan base is going to skyrocket. Be active in the UFC media. Go to pay-per-view events where they show fighters at the pay-per-view events. Go there, be in the front row. Do media days. Do random interviews with, Megan O'Leary. Do interviews with John Anik. Again, go to Joe Rogan. Give back to the fans. Go to autograph signings and things of that sort. And one of the other things that I really want to touch on here, Bo Nickal's Instagram is funny. Like, he makes pretty good content of him training, of him eating right. He had a whole video just bashing on vegans, which was funny, or it wasn't even, he was trolling, right? He said he was becoming vegan, saying all this stuff, and he knew the camera was still on. The guy points down, and you can hear him in the background say, God, all right, let's go cook a steak. Like, that little shit is funny. It's gonna get you more fans. Like, that's just how the Instagram and the social works. Like, sound like a boomer saying the Instagram, but seriously, this is what you got to do. Be more active in the media, social media. Go to pay-per-views, go to media days, do interviews, go to the PI and train. That's another important thing. Go to the PI and meet all these other fighters so that way they start talking about you and what their experience has been like training with you. And go fight with them, learn new skills, get better, but get your name out there, Bo. In the fall, Bo Nickal was the best wrestler at Penn State, the best wrestler Penn State has had in, I think, forever, honestly. Champion of the school, absolute massive name at that school, but Penn State is a huge football school. So what I would love to see Bo Nickal do is go to a Penn State football game, a big game. Now, they played Michigan at home this year, and they played Ohio State away, so they're going to play Ohio State away this year. Now, or Ohio State at home this year. Now, I think that'd be a really fun game to go to. I do think Penn State would lose, and I would like to see Bo Nickal at a Penn State 1 game, so maybe he goes to Penn State when they play UCLA. Penn State is now branching out, and they may do a national broadcast of that game. Find a game that game day is at, go to that game at Penn State, get on the panel with Pat McAfee, let him talk things up with you. Pat McAfee's also really good, much like I said Shane Gillis is great at helping people get their personality to shine. I think that would be a brilliant move from Bo Nickal. Get to Penn State, get on game day, do a 10-minute conversation talking about his experience at Penn State, talking about what he did with Penn State, talking about the football game, come prepared to be talking about football a little bit there, and just let Pat McAfee know what's next for you. Eventually, you're going to be able to go on the Pat McAfee show. If he likes that conversation that you had, he's going to invite you on the show for 10, 15 minutes. Whether you come on the set or whether you zoom in for 10, 15 minutes, he's going to have his whole cast ready to ask you good, thoughtful questions, not the shit questions about the weather and how exciting it is to be in Pennsylvania or Indianapolis, like the absolute bots that the UFC corporate media has. Those guys suck. John Morgan's okay. The Schmo is clearly the best at asking questions. Everyone else that's not a fan sucks at asking questions at those press conferences. And Pat McAfee's team does a really good job of asking good, thoughtful questions that will provoke an interesting answer. They ask questions that people want the answers to, not the bullshit about the weather. And I bet Pat McAfee can do a really, really good job of building Bo Nickal to the casual fan base to the point where people will tune in to watch him. And at this time is when they should make the announcement that Bo Nickal is fighting again in December against Shara Magomedov on the last pay-per-view of the year. I'm fine with making this a feature fight. You have a great main, you have an awesome co-main, you have this as a feature fight, and you have 2 other good fights outside of it on the last pay-per-view of the year. This would be his 3rd fight in 2024. Shara Magomedov is supposed to fight Ihor Potieria at UFC Saudi Arabia on June 22nd. Now, I don't know if that fight's going to stay through because Ihor Potieria took a fight against Michel Pereira because Mahmoud Muradov backed out of the fight due to maybe an injury or something like that. Backed out of the fight on UFC 301 in Brazil. Potieria stepped in. That's on May 4th. This fight with Shara was supposed to be on June 22nd. I'm willing to bet they find a replacement for that fight to fight Shara. I think they're going to keep him on the card because I really do think that it's not Abu Dhabi. Saudi Arabia really wants Shara on that card. I think he's perfect for the fan base over there. They'll give him another fight. He's going to probably dispose of the guy quick because I think they want to get Shara a win. And then Shara versus Bo Nickal, both coming off big wins and big crowds, going to fight in December, wherever they do it in December. If they do it in Vegas again, they've gone to Vegas a lot, so I'd like to see them mix it up. Maybe they go to like Dallas. Maybe they go somewhere, like Florida, Jacksonville, because Jacksonville deserves, after putting on for the UFC for a year. You go to Miami again. You go to some of these crazy places that we haven't gone yet, or gone too much. You have Shara Magomedov versus Bo Nickal on that pay-per-view. That's another Dagestani that Bo Nickal can rag around. Shara's a striker. And if Bo shows that he can beat a wrestling Dagestani and then a striking Dagestani back-to-back, that builds insane hype for him. So I think Shara versus Bo Nickal in December on the last pay-per-view of the year, that gives Bo Nickal his third fight in 2024, gets him right outside the rankings, so that way he can take a little bit of time off. And I'm not saying ridiculous time off. Take 6 months off, right? Take 6 months off. You fought in December. The next time you fight should be a little bit down the road. 6 months, 7 months off, and I have the perfect date for him with the perfect opponent. If you've been watching my content, you know who the next fighter is, and I'm going to get there in a moment, but what I want him to work on is specifically his kicks. I know his boxing is actually pretty good. His wrestling is very, very good, but MMA grappling and collegiate and just Olympic level wrestling are two different things. MMA grappling obviously includes the fence. There's more jiu-jitsu involved. Like, work on your MMA grappling a little bit more to really find that in. Work on your kicks and continue to work on your boxing. And then on International Fight Week in 2025, fight Chris Curtis to get in the rankings. Here's why this is an awesome matchup. Because Chris Curtis is the best takedown defense in the division. He truly does. He never gets taken down. Statistically, he has the best takedown defense in the division. Now, Brendan Allen might have brought him to 2. But Chris Curtis is a great, great person to match Bo Nickal up against because he's a great boxer, striker. He doesn't kick much. He's a good boxer, so he likes to get in range. Bo Nickal likes to box as well. His best part of his striking is his boxing. It's not his kicks. It's not his Muay Thai. It's his boxing. And then Bo Nickal's best part of his game is his wrestling. Chris Curtis has insane takedown defense. Now, you might be asking, why Chris Curtis all the way at International Fight Week? Well, he tore his hamstring against Brendan Allen. That's going to be at least 6 to 8 months out. From now, that puts us at the end of the year. That's before I think he can really start training. 6 to 8 months before he can really start training again. Maybe a little less than that. So he starts training at the end of next year, gets back into good shape, is ready to get back in the octagon, fights at International Fight Week in 2025 in July against Bo Nickal. That's Bo Nickal's way to get into the top 15. Now, I reckon Bo Nickal can win this fight. I also reckon it to be a tougher fight for him, the toughest one that he would have to face at that point. So I think this is the perfect way to get him a tougher matchup than he's had in the past, but it's still a matchup that he can win. So I give Bo Nickal to Chris Curtis, especially after he's been training for, 6 or 7 months leading up to this fight. This is the fight to make. You put him on the pay-per-view again, and this dude has insane hype at this point. He is probably So he's 5-0 now. He beats Brundage. He beats Duraev. He beats Shara. That makes him to 8-0. And then he goes into this fight 8-0 on the pay-per-view against Chris Curtis, a legend of the sport is a stretch, but a perennial veteran, somebody that's been in the top 15 for a while now. Somebody that has a ton of fights on his record, someone that is actually a good fighter. This builds a ton of good hype. And if Bo Nickal gets this win, December is his time. Go fight in December. Go fight Ikram Aliskerov. Now, the reason I'm saying Ikram Aliskerov is because I think by this point, Ikram will have a couple wins under his belt that have gotten him into the top 10. Everyone wants to see Ikram versus Bo Nickal. We want to see it now. Imagine how much more we're going to want to see it when they're both ranked number 15 and number 10. Or number 14 and number 7. Imagine that fight. You have a Dagestani that has very good wrestling and is a good, powerful striker against Bo Nickal. If Bo beats this dude, beats another Dagestani by ragdolling them, or just finds a way to beat a dude that people are scared is coming up, someone that gave Hamzat Chimaev a competitive fight that's in the top 10, not only will Bo break into the top 10, but he will become a star. At this point, if Bo follows the road that I have mapped out, he will become an absolute star. I'm so ready for this. It's Bo Nickal's time. It's Bo Nickal's time to become a star, guys. This is the way he does it. The UFC put him in a tough spot. They really put him in a tough spot to get the fans to go against him here. Now, they weren't actively trying to get the fans against him. What they were doing is trying to let fans talk about him. They don't care if it's positive or negative. You guys know the saying, any media, any press is good press. But it's negative towards Bo Nickal right now. If he follows these steps, he's going to be one of the biggest stars in the UFC. And I can't wait. Please, Bo, I know you didn't see this. I know you're not going to see this. I don't care. For everyone watching, please remember to like and subscribe. And if you want to see Bo Nickal be successful, I just built a roadmap for it. Tell everyone you know. Please, again, like and subscribe. Thanks for watching. Get ready for UFC 300 this weekend. I'm so excited.